I originally didn't want to talk about this topic because I know it's a huge can of worms, but I just have so many feelings and I have a lot to say about it and I just cannot contain it any longer. So here are all my current thoughts on K-pop.
It's very exciting, you know. Different things are happening. Like, you know, it's very emotional, you know.
So I started listening to K-pop again around December of last year after taking around a decade-long hiatus from listening to it. And as I kept YouTube on autoplay, it started recommending me newer and newer music as I was mainly listening to music from, you know, the 2010s, the early part of the 2010s. And as it kept recommending me new music, I just was like, God, K-pop has never been this good. And soon I was all caught up with the current bands, the current music, and I also, of course, had to do a deep dive and go into that rabbit hole of all of the things that I missed when I was away from it, besides just the music, and it was a lot. I debated for a while on whether I should make this video or not because I'm an outsider. I'm not like a huge stan, nor am I someone that's in the industry. I just like K-pop. I would just consider myself like a casual fan, but in the end I decided to go ahead and make this video anyway because I just really want to talk about it. And this video, though probably around 45 minutes to an hour long, will only be scratching the surface of what K-pop is. So please keep that in mind, as well as check out the articles and videos I watched to make this video linked down below, especially those highlighted with asterisks. Lastly, I didn't want this video to be seen as a takedown video or an X is problematic video or an everything wrong with video, just because I'm going to be talking about some of the more negative and uncomfortable sides of the industry. So here's what this video isn't. It's not a takedown video, it's not here to crap on K-pop and say why it's terrible and you should feel like a bad person for liking something with problems, because I think in 2021, we should all be in a space where we know we can still like things with more pernicious aspects. Secondly, this video isn't me telling you to feel one way or another about K-pop. More likely than not, you've already decided where you stand on this issue before clicking on the video. I'm not here to build K-pop up to be something more than it is, or to make it out as less than it is. You need to form your own opinion about it, if you haven't already, and maybe this video will help you do that. So here's what this video is. It's a frank discussion about K-pop, the industry, the subsequent consequences of the industry, both good and bad, and why I enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. In the end, I'm just someone who likes making video essays, and I'm just a person, like I'm not a scholar or anything. All this information is online for you to look up, and like I said, all of the information that I used to make this video is in the description. So do not take this video as like the gospel truth or the definitive take on K-pop or anything. And feel free to, of course, disagree with my own opinions, which I'm sure you'll do in the comments down below. And on the flip side, if you end up liking this video, please give it a like and share it with someone, subscribe and ring the bell so the YouTube algorithm knows to push this video out to more people. And of course, before we start, let me introduce myself. Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Cheyenne, and I post new videos every other Friday on film and pop culture phenomena. I make video essays, so if you want to see them, please, of course, again, subscribe and ring the bell. And if you want to help my channel grow, please think about donating to my Patreon. The link will be here. So with that all out of the way, let's start the video. So K-pop, as it's popularly known, stands for Korean popular music. However, K-pop, more broadly, is just music from South Korea and doesn't just include the genre of bubblegum pop music, for example. Korean artists cover a wide variety of genres such as R&B, hip-hop, rock, rap, funk, trap, classical, etc. The K-pop industry, on the other hand, is something else entirely. In South Korea, it's widely known that there are three big entertainment companies that tend to hold most of the power and influence, those being SM Entertainment, JYP Entertainment, and YG Entertainment. There are, of course, other entertainment companies like Big Hit Entertainment, who BTS works for, and Loan Entertainment, now known as Kakao M Entertainment, who IU works for. Anyway, these entertainment agencies employ a star-making or idol-making business model. As a side note, a few of the articles I read compared the industry to how Motown Records trained singers and artists during the 1960s. Chocolate Rain star and singer-songwriter Tae Zonde compared the Korean music industry machines to that of the golden age of Motown Records in a 2013 video where YouTubers react to K-pop.
Major companies that put these groups together and trained them for years to produce them into stars.
The whole Motown system of creating groups of artists was very much a factory processing situation for human beings. Maybe K-pop is South Korea's Motown era.
Often hailed as the epitome and beginnings of R&B in the mainstream, many wouldn't think that most of the groups were actually formed expertly by record execs, with their image and sound finely molded. As Crystal Anderson, the author of Soul in Seoul, put it, foreign producers who attend music camps in Korea sponsored by Korean entertainment agencies also recognize the quality of this distinct form of Korean pop music. Rodney Chick Bell describes the difference between American music production and Korean music production. The average American song is 4 melodies, maybe 5. The average K-pop song is 8 to 10. They are also very heavy in the harmonies. Kevin Randolph adds, "The one loop beat doesn't work over there. You definitely get to stretch. No other style of music has that many parts in their songs." This high music quality is inextricably linked to the image of Korean pop stars who engage in the kind of cultural work we also see in Motown. In South Korea today, entertainment agencies recruit trainees from a young age, usually kids who are in middle school or who are in their early years of high school, and have them live together and then train for debut slots. In the Blackpink documentary on Netflix entitled Light Up the Sky, the trainee process is talked about extensively.
I think what makes K-pop is the time that we spend as a trainee. We all live together, sort of like a boarding school.
I think there were like 9 girls. They were planning on creating a big group, so they had a lot of girls there.
They need you to be at their standard in every single subject.
저 같은 경우에 처음 들어왔을 때 레슨도 너무 많았어서 진짜 하루에 춤 레슨도 막 3-4개씩 받으면서 막 연습하고 완전 보컬 레슨도 막 2 선생님, 3 선생님 해서 막 받고 막 그때 제일 힘들었는데.
It's not easy. That repetition, but at such young age, they are able to absorb all the techniques and the tools that they need for their next 10 years.
At the end of every month, our boss and all the producers would come and we'd perform a solo song, a group song, and a group choreography.
저희가 직접 짜고 근데 이제 담당이 있어요. 평가 끝나고 점수 같은 거 나와요. 누가 A고 누가 B고 누가 C고.
We'd get a day off every fortnight and then practice again for another 13 days.
So like 14 hours a day just training.
Jenny mentioned how they didn't really tackle regular school subjects, but rather solely focused on singing and dancing, sometimes for 14 hours a day. They then had to perform each week for the executives and then receive their criticism, which by the sound of it seemed very harsh and discouraging. They did this for around 4 to 5 years until the company, in this case YG, chose who they were going to debut. Jenny said that basically all of the girls who started with her ended up not making the cut and are no longer with the company.
I remember having to send a good friend of mine home every month because they got eliminated from the test.
The entertainment companies obviously recruit more kids than they end up using, as some quit, others just aren't good enough, and with time, plans just change. For example, in Blackpink's case, they were supposed to be a 9-member girl group, but then it got changed to 4. This business model really gives the finger to all of the poor kids who end up wasting years of their lives training, since many never get to debut and end up being cut. Trainee years can even last up to a decade, and if nothing comes of it, that's on you. It really is a gamble because you leave your fate to someone else's money-grubbing hands. No matter how hard you work or try, it doesn't really matter if you're just not what they're looking for. And that's not even to mention all the predatory stuff that goes on behind the scenes with all of these young people living together and then being judged weekly by grown adults.
진짜 되게 뭐랄까 어린 나이에 제가 데뷔를 했잖아요. 16살? 그리고 중3 때 데뷔했고 어떻게 보면 연습생 막 이런 시절까지 포함해서 이제 이 꿈을 위해 달리기 시작한 게 13살. 제가 근데 지금 29이고 16년 동안 나름 열심히 해왔다고 생각해요. 이제 뭔가 그 공백기가 생긴다는 게 물론 제 그것도 아쉽고 속상한 일이지만 되게 그런 느낌이에요. 나의 일막 막 지난 시간을 돌이켜보는 것 같은?
It must be extremely scary and hectic, not to mention the pressure of competition from fellow peers. In the Blackpink documentary, they do push the narrative that it was all worth it in the end, all the criticism and sleepless nights and being away from family, etc., and in the end, I am happy for them. I think we all need to narrate our lives in a sense to make everything more meaningful, and that's okay. So after a group is formed, they then start the process of debuting. Debuting is a very critical time in a group's life because members need to start paying the company who trained them back. It is said, however, that the top 3 entertainment agencies that I mentioned before, SM, JYP, and YG, don't have this policy and trainees start making money right off the bat. But K-pop stars not under these companies must pay back their trainee debt before they can even start seeing a cent of their own money. And of course, it's in the company's best interest to promote the group as well. It's important to note that some companies don't handle a group's debut well, or are unable to capitalize off the success of a group properly, and most times when debuts turn sour, it's due to faulty management, leaving both parties in debt. But of course the teens and young adults end up bearing the brunt of the fallout as they just wasted X amount of years of their life only to fizzle out into obscurity. One can also become an independent artist away from the industry, but the really successful groups with staying power, who do remain few and far between, are usually repped by a powerful agency. Some groups become extremely popular after their debut, but most garner attention with time as their fan base in music grows and as they find their sound. It's important to have a good agency to take care of you and prioritize your group as well, because if not, even a successful debut can take a downturn. But if you pass this stage and prove successful monetarily, it's usually uphill from there. You have comebacks, which is when a group takes a break for a while and then, comes back. These usually take the form of really big PR campaigns and a whole new look or vibe. With K-pop groups, they don't really have a single set style of music or genre. They're constantly experimenting and, though may have a general look, always have the flexibility of mixing things up when it comes to comebacks. As popularity builds around your group, you usually go on tours of Asia, release songs specifically for Japanese audiences, and have the ability to go solo. In the US, going solo is associated with breaking up the band, but in South Korea, it's very common for artists to have their own solo careers and even start subunits within their own group or company. For example, Super M is made up of members from various groups under SM Entertainment. Solo careers are also helpful when members of your group need to take their mandatory military leave of 18 to 20 months. Recently, the South Korean government has let K-pop stars delay military service to age 30 rather than taking it from when they're 18 to 28 years old. Which is really good for BTS, who have some members approaching 30, since they apparently make up around 0.3% of South Korea's GDP. Members after debuting may become shareholders of the entertainment company that raised them, might become music producers themselves, go on to acting, or even stay with the group if there's still enough interest and money to be made. For example, in March of 2012, 4 years after their debut, SHINee became small stockholders of SM Entertainment. Others take on brand and fashion deals and become influencers in their own right. The sky's the limit when it comes to life post-stardom, which does sound really nice. After debuting and repaying trainee debt, one can also just leave the group altogether or not renew their contract with the agency. For example, Jessica Jung and Tiffany Young, who are Korean-American singers and former members of SNSD, left in 2016 and 2017 respectively, around 10 years after their debut in 2007. Some members, however, do not have it that easy. Chris of XO, another band under SM Entertainment, wanted to terminate his contract in 2014, only 3 years after their debut date in 2011. due to the fact that he felt as though the company didn't care about his health, had an unfair profit distribution system, and felt as though he was being marketed more like a product than a person. Chris, alongside 2 other members of EXO, Luhan and Tao, who were all Chinese and part of the Mandarin subunit EXO-M, sued SM Entertainment to get out of their contracts and left the band, both EXO and the subunit EXO-M, which is currently inactive. From what I could find online, Chris and Luhan are still under SM's management till their contract expires in 2022, and are just sharing the revenue from their Chinese activities with SM, while Tao has to pay some sort of money to SM as his actions, such as promoting himself without SM's consent, were seen as egregious in the eyes of the South Korean court. There is also talk of slave contracts, where kids as young as 12 are manipulated into signing their life away to dubious talent agencies, who could then terminate their contract for anything as little as gaining a kilogram or having a romantic relationship, and then could drown them in trainee debt. Not to mention that some contracts were so restrictive that the idols themselves would accrue little to no profit for years after their debut. These have been reformed in 2010 and again in 2017, so the contract with the trainee would cap at 7 years, and that the financial penalty for leaving as a trainee would be reduced. In addition, it's now harder for agencies to force employees to renew their contract with the company. However, that only fixes some of the problems in the industry and doesn't really help the fact that idols were still being worked to exhaustion and having their health dismissed during this time. For example, Hyuna, who is currently under P Nation but was under JYP and Cube Entertainment, had serious panic attacks and health problems, including vasovagal syncope, which were dismissed by her former agencies, which subsequently meant that she'd be prone to fainting and spells of fatigue. Chris, who I mentioned earlier, was forced to perform even though he was diagnosed with myocarditis, or inflammation of the middle layer of the heart wall, from July 2013 to January 2014. I'm glad that talking about the darker side of K-pop is more common now than it was just a decade ago, because these things should be talked about and not seen as normal or just something you have to do or go through to make it big. I think we applaud celebrities who in general can take the abuse and come out better people, or who say it was all worth it, when in reality, just because some people feel that way or may express it on the outside to dodge public ridicule, doesn't invalidate the real horror stories that lie just beneath the surface. Now let's talk about K-pop more deeply within the scope of music. I think there's a stereotype that a lot of singers, whether they're K-pop stars or not, don't write their own songs, and because of that, they're fake. When that's just not true. A lot of songwriting and music producing, no matter where you are in the world, is a collaborative process. Especially in South Korea, where a group's early stages are controlled by the producers and executives behind the scenes in order to make back as much money as possible. Members don't really have the freedom to just start writing lyrics willy-nilly. Sunmi of Wonder Girls even spoke out about this on her Instagram in 2019, writing, "No matter the format, creating something is a very difficult process. You also need help from many people in various ways." But with time and popularity, one does get more control over one's music, and some groups have more control than others. BTS, for example, has 3 main members who write lyrics for their songs. RM, aka Namjoon, J-Hope, and Suga are the main lyricists. But they also had Halsey work on lyrics for their album, as well as various other artists and music producers. Writing a song is a group effort, and in the world of K-pop, a very international one, which I think is kinda cool. Rodney Chick Bell, who worked on EXO's Overdose and Monster, Girls' Generation Mr. Mr., Taeyeon's Y, Red Velvet's Red Dress, NCT's 127's Kick It, and more recently Shiny's Don't Call Me, said in one interview, "I remember once hearing years ago that you will never see any artists of color on the Korean charts. That's what an executive in Korea told me," Chick recalled. "But when I looked around, everyone was of a different race writing the song. I think that is what hurts and what we're fighting for. Inclusivity and the acknowledgement of who's really helping these artists be who they are." And she's right. Not enough credit is given to the people behind the scenes, especially the black creatives behind the scenes, like Chick, Dem Joints, Claude Kelly, Adrian McKinnon, The Stereotypes, and more. We'll get deeper into this later in the video, so stay tuned. But for now, I just want to say that I think K-pop music really is able to break down barriers when it comes to the international potential of music, even though a lot of people, specifically black artists, sound mixers, and producers, deserve a lot more recognition. clips of K-pop boy bands specifically to people who don't like or don't know about K-pop, the first things that they say are usually, are those girls and are they gay? I think a lot of the fear and disdain for K-pop is because of the gender bending element to it. The image of men wearing nail polish, makeup, skirts, or berets scares people, but it really shouldn't. Not only because you should respect people no matter what they're wearing, but also because most times stars are just working as blank canvases for fashion brand deals. And since high fashion usually tends to be a bit more loose with the binary, that's what some of these people end up wearing. But that doesn't mean that celebrities don't have agency when choosing their wardrobe. Some are trying to make intentional choices with how they present to the world, and that's important. And it is cool that people can find representation of pretty men in K-pop and men just being able to do things that are usually frowned upon. As Gabrielle Brown wrote for GLAAD in 2018 in their article entitled How the Boys of K-pop Influenced My Trans Identity, through clothes and makeup, my idols in K-pop music videos were able to express a level of androgyny. They were challenging the notion of the gender binary and associated stereotypes. These men were just like me, and for the first time in my life I was able to relate to someone's gender expression. Through their performance, I realized that being a pretty boy was okay, which led me to finally see myself as a trans man over the following years. Now I'm 20, and without my exposure to the South Korean music industry, I'm sure it would have taken me much longer to accept my truth. And there are a lot of K-pop stars who are pro-LGBTQ+ and identify as such. American Korean rapper Marshall came out as gay in 2015. Top Dog's Hansol came out as asexual in an Instagram Live in 2017. Amber is of course known for not confining her self-expression to any strict binary. There was also a K-pop group Lady who debuted in 2005 as an all-trans K-pop girl group, but unfortunately disbanded a few years after that. Choi Bit was a trans K-pop artist who is now trying to find work as a model. And Holland, an out gay K-pop star, debuted independently in 2018 after his agency refused to let him come out as a gay idol. And in response, other people felt comfortable enough to come out as well, which is awesome. Gay marriage is of course still illegal in South Korea, and members of the community aren't federally protected. As Michelle Kim wrote in their article for them, there are anti-discrimination mandates in some districts, but not federally, and many LGBTQ+ Koreans have very little actual protection against discrimination and harassment in everyday life. Gay sex is still illegal among members of the military, and conscription is mandatory for all cis men. Back in May, a COVID-19 outbreak in Seoul's gay nightclub district, Itaewon, sparked an intense wave of anti-gay panic, with some local media outlets publishing the names and workplaces of some of the club's clientele. Not surprisingly, there's also a lot of heteronormativity within mainstream culture. For example, in a recent interview I watched with Shiny on the variety show Men on a Mission, the host mentioned that Key was visited by a lot of his friends who also happened to be women. And of course, they all played into this idea that they were more than just friends and that nothing could be gained from male visitors.
나는 이제 연예인 동료들이 많이 왔었어.
여자 연예인 분들이 많이 가셨어.
혜리.
그러니까 날 안 찾았지.
맞아. 혜리하고 또
소유. 또 보아 선배.
태연 누나.
아 태연 누나.
예리.
예리도 왔다.
남자는 안 받는데잖아.
내가 와도 누릴 수 있는 효과가 없어.
And though it's fine for idols to dress against the confines of gender norms on stage, or even just in their day-to-day life, doesn't mean that non-idols who aren't stereotypically beautiful and thin and famous or artists get that same leeway. They also sometimes even lampshade how feminine they're made to look and make jokes about it. In a recent interview with Shiny and IU, Key made a joke saying that he couldn't tell who his bandmate Taemin was and who was IU.
막 줄리엣이랑
깜짝이야.
이거 뭐야? 이게 뭐야?
아 왼쪽에 아이유 씨인 거죠?
저도 순간 둘 다 전 줄 알았어요.
여자예요, 남자예요?
남자.
안 했어.
안 했어?
아, sorry.
남자예요. 근데 뭐 혹시 모르죠. 남자예요, 남자.
I personally think that we should just let people wear what they want and love who they want and present how they want, and don't try to assume or guess or project what's going on inside people's lives, because you never know what other people are going through. Another comment I get when I show K-pop, girl groups in this case, to people who are uninitiated, the first thing that they say is usually, "Those girls look like they're 10. In general, East Asian women have higher feminine ideals to live up to due to the stereotypes that East Asian women are just naturally thin, hairless, odorless, demure, petite, and obedient. But those are just stereotypes, and no East Asian woman could ever live up to all of those things at once, or any of them at all." The comment that girl groups from South Korea look like they're 10 is extremely hurtful because it enforces this notion that East Asian women are essentially children and furthers their fetishization in the media. Women come in all shapes and sizes, and though there is an infantilizing aspect of K-pop and women's bodies in general, no matter where you are in the world, it's important to note that women can just have different body shapes. And just because these women look one way, doesn't mean all Korean women or all Asian women have bodies of 10-year-old girls. Fat Asian women exist just as much as skinny Asian women exist, so just expand your view of what Asian women can look like, period. Women get shit for both being too skinny and too fat. There literally is no winning. However, I'd be remiss to say that there isn't a certain body type women in K-pop are expected to maintain, and that there is a definite patriarchal reason why they all have similar body shapes. But you shouldn't shame the performers for that, because they're just doing what they're told, and it's probably really freaking hard. I can only imagine the amount of eating disorders and body issues brought on by such standards. And actually, Amber Liu of FFX talked about the horrors of diet culture in K-pop in a recent interview, stating that sometimes people would go days without eating.
Oh, I'm gonna, try this diet. I'm on this diet right now, or, I'm doing this thing where I just only drink water. Like it's scary. I've definitely done some of them, and I've really screwed up my body. I think for women, there's a bigger emphasis on visuals and how you look. Is your hair the right length? Are your legs the right shape? Are you skinny enough? Or are you too skinny? But for girls, it's what we talk about all the time. Like, we can't eat. Or what diet are you on? I tried this procedure today. Do you want to try it? Like, it's scary, and it's very unhealthy.
So maybe back off a little with your extremely reductive comments about Asian women's bodies. Another comment that is commonly heard when showing K-pop to people who don't like K-pop or who aren't into K-pop is, how do you tell them apart? Playing into this idea that all Asian people look the same. And though of course it's obvious that there is a very homogeneous beauty standard in South Korea that is reinforced with cosmetic surgery and skin lightening, that also doesn't mean that all Asian people look the same, either before or after plastic surgery. If you're not familiar with Asian people, you probably do think all Asian people look the same. But the more you spend time looking at Asian people and familiarize yourself with our faces, the more you can start telling us apart and seeing us as unique individuals. A lot of people write off K-pop because there are these groups of Asian people speaking some scary foreign language, and to them, they all look the same. And that's not really surprising, considering that the scariest thing to non-Asian people is Asian people doing things in sync. Watch my video about xenophobia here. Another comment I hear a lot is, why K-pop? Why is this working? And I think something that's baked into this question of why is K-pop successful or why is this working is xenophobia and racism. Because K-pop comes from East Asia, there's this belief that it just shouldn't work because it's foreign and it's not in English or from North America or Western Europe. I don't know if people would be as curious as they are about K-pop if they were white. On the other hand, there was the whole British invasion, and that was studied very heavily and seen as a cultural phenomena and shift, so there's that, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with race. And obviously, because xenophobia exists and racism exists, it's perfectly natural to wonder why K-pop is so successful, and there's a natural curiosity that brings us to that question, especially since it's basically the only modern pop culture thing from East Asia that most people know about. But it also sometimes feels like a backhanded compliment. The aesthetic of K-pop can also be seen by people as either fulfilling stereotypes that non-Asian people already have about Asian people. For example, Asian men are effeminate and Asian women all have prepubescent bodies. Or K-pop defamiliarizes them with their preconceived notions of Asian people. For example, because Asian people, specifically men, are seen in the US as undesirable, seeing Asian men being beautiful, hot, and talented can make people uncomfortable. On the other hand, a lot of people think that just because K-pop is in the modern lexicon, that means racism against regular Asian people is less prevalent, when that's not true. I actually made a video about this a long time ago that I'll put here. Sometimes I meet people and they're like, my kid loves K-pop, and I'm like, okay. And actually this happened to me once. It was a parent telling me, an adult, and they also pulled their eyes back at me. The prevalence of K-pop doesn't stop hate crimes against Asian people, nor does it educate people on how Korean names work, as seen with the horrible reporting on the shooting that resulted in the deaths of 6 Asian women. If anything, I think a lot of non-Asian people who hate Asian people are afraid of K-pop because they're xenophobic, or think that Asian people are taking their jobs or replacing white people. The white supremacist shooting that happened in March, as well as the rise of hate crimes against Asian people due to COVID and government propaganda, prove that. A lot of racism against Asian people gets swept under the rug because of the model minority myth. White people in charge don't want to report crimes against Asian people as hate crimes or as racially motivated because it would mean tearing down the model minority myth and saying that yes, racism against Asian people is still prevalent. It would mean giving more Asian people on a wide scale a reason to rebel and unionize with other marginalized racial groups, and they're freaking scared of that. Many times, racism against Asian people takes the form of jokes that get normalized and pushed to the side as not being that bad, but that's where it starts. Microaggressions sow the seeds for violent acts. We need to call out everything as racism, from a joke to a murder, because it's all connected. But most people in power aren't willing to concede that yes, Asian people are victims of racism in society. There were a few Asian K-pop idols like J Park, CL, Eric Nam, and black K-pop idols like Senegalese idol and member of Black Swan, Bato Samba, who made posts to raise awareness about anti-Asian sentiment, which was really awesome. But like with everything, we still have a long way to go. So let's talk about plastic surgery and looking white. If you've been part of the discourse, you know that in South Korea, plastic surgery is very common and not seen as something to be ashamed of. It's seen as an investment in yourself and your future, and that's fine. Of course, it does get to be a problem and less of a choice when your success in life sort of depends on being beautiful, especially since most of the time you must submit a photo of yourself with your resume. I think that though it is true that a lot of the procedures K-pop idols go under are to make them appear more Western European, like getting higher nose bridges, changing their face shape to be smaller, and enlarging their eyes, it's also important to remember that Asian people can also just naturally possess those features. Asian people look different from one another, and aren't a homogeneous blob. Some are born with double eyelids, or higher nose bridges, or smaller faces, lighter hair, etc. I also don't think we should shame people for trying to look white, or assume that someone hates themselves when they dye their hair blonde, when that's the image that's globally shoved down our throats on a daily basis. And some people just think it's cool, like it's not always that deep. I do think, however, that skin lightening and really caking on the white makeup is a definite problem, especially when you see some of the stars' early debut skin tones. In the same interview with Amber Liu, she mentioned how she was deemed too dark and had to lighten her skin.
That's what I have to do. And I remember that I was too dark. Like my skin was too tan and I had to brighten my skin. I lost a lot of weight. I developed a lot of really bad eating disorders.
There's also, of course, a fear of getting tan and getting too dark that is also very pernicious in South Korea and in Asian communities as a whole.
근데 골프 재밌을 것 같아. 재밌대. 아니 근데 내가 골프 치면 나 진짜 안 어울릴 것 같아. 근데 골프 치면 다 타잖아요, 막. 그치?
I think maybe there was a short period of embracing a more natural style in the early days of K-pop, where people just had their regular skin tone, but now with everything being 4K HD and images just being currency nowadays, Skin lightening has gone to the extreme, and it's scary. And of course, colorism in South Korea is also to blame. Generally, in Asian communities, pale is pretty and good, and anyone who doesn't have pale skin deserves to be treated worse than people with lighter skin. Colorism exists not just within East Asian communities, but in South Asian and Southeast Asian countries as well. And of course, there's a colorist hierarchy in the continent of Asia itself, where East Asian people treat people from South and Southeast Asia worse because of this idea that everyone from those countries have darker skin and the negative stereotypes about their countries in general. Without, of course, self-reflecting that people in East Asia can also have darker skin and are treated as less than because of it. Colorism is a serious issue in Asian communities, both within the diaspora and outside of it, that needs to be addressed and stopped because it leads to real harm. Whether it be psychological issues or worse treatment by the law, it needs to be dealt with. In this portion of the video, I will be citing a few Black creators who have talked about racism in fandom, specifically Adiola Ash and Stitch. Please do not harass them. If anything, you should just be supportive of their work and all the hard work that they're doing. The K-pop industry for a while now has been called out for appropriating Black American culture. From the genres of music they choose to cover to the hairstyles and fashion and aesthetic, it's very evident that they've taken a lot of inspiration from Black artists. And this, of course, isn't a coincidence. As Adiola Ash cited on her channel, which I suggest checking out, South Korean industry giants like Lee Soo-man, founder of SM Entertainment, and Bang Si-hyuk, the music producer who has helped BTS rise to fame, have said K-pop is modeled after Black American music because it gives a lower barrier to entry when it comes to Western markets and monetary success. Like J-pop was based on American rock music, K-pop was based on Black music. As Adiola Ash points out, it's no surprise that the first K-pop song to appear on the Billboard Hot 100 was Nobody by the Wonder Girls, which was a clear nod to the Supremes of Motown Records. It's all coming full circle, isn't it? And this cultural exchange would be wholly positive if Black people globally weren't a historically shat upon group who experience lack of rights and representation throughout the entire world. The US, for example, loves to export Black culture for profit, but they hate Black people, thus making any cultural exchange a weighted and hypocritical one. For example, many US officials claim racism isn't the American way, when at the same time our country was founded on race-based slavery and is currently incarcerating and killing Black Americans every day. South Korea has its own brand of anti-Blackness and overall xenophobia, which makes the appropriation of Black culture a problem in the first place. From decades of doing blackface and minstrelsy, to SHINee doing this in 2014, to K-pop group Mamamoo doing blackface sketches of Uptown Funk in 2017, to more blackface with students doing this graduation ceremony dress-up in 2020, it's pretty bad. Before we go on, I will say that appropriation is a neutral term. It doesn't necessarily imply malice or intent, it's just a cultural phenomenon when one culture repurposes another culture for themselves. Rap, for example, though created by Black Americans, has become a global genre and repurposed both inside and outside of the US by many different groups of people, not just in South Korea, but also in Brazil and Germany, for example. As Stitch, a Black K-pop fan who writes extensively on the topic of anti-Blackness in fandom and K-pop, wrote in their blog post, Cultural Appropriation in the Age of K-pop Part 2, "At the end of the day, I wish there was more actual cultural appreciation in Korean hip-hop and pop spaces and less, no, appropriation. That's partly why I didn't list rap and hip-hop dances like twerking or crumping on my list of things that served as signals of cultural appropriation from Korean hip-hop or pop. I do actually think that there's no inherent appropriation present in non-Black people simply rapping and dancing in ways that are visibly hip-hop because they like the music or think it's cool. Where it gets problematic is when the appreciation of Black music and style starts to become a costume and a game used for money, clout, and profit. For example, you can rap and break dance, but do you need to braid your hair or use AAVE aspects of Black culture that are used against real Black people when it comes to employment, for example? Probably not, but you'll see plenty of K-pop stars don a Black persona anyway just because. There's also something inherent in K-pop itself about seeing just everything as a costume or concept due to the fact that changing a group's look for different comeback periods and albums is just part of what K-pop is. And that's fine when it comes to some concepts and looks, but Black culture isn't a costume. It would take hours for me to break down every single racist thing that an idol has done. For that, I suggest Adiola Ash's very thorough breakdown, but I will list some notable examples here. BTS member Suga and Big Hit Entertainment, their agency, got into hot water for using a clip from a speech from cult leader Jim Jones, who committed a mass murder-suicide in Guyana in 1978 on Suga's mixtape. Big Hit responded admitting that something went wrong in the selection process and that the clip wasn't vetted correctly. In addition, the blame was put on the company rather than the individual. It's tricky when it comes to K-pop because a lot of the time it's the brand and company that's in control of the final decisions and the image of the group and the members within the group. But big idols like Suga, who publicly take pride in the fact that they make their own music, as well as other individuals, do actually have a say in what they look like and what their music sounds like, and should at least take some sort of responsibility. For example, EXO's Kai has gone on record saying that he specifically asked for this hairstyle. Individuals do need to be held accountable, especially when K-pop idols use the N-word when they cover songs or even just in conversation. A lot of people say, well, they just didn't know any better, and it's like, Firstly, don't infantilize your faves and say that they're just ignorant babies when we all know that the N-word is just not something you should say, and it's pretty globally known. Even in Brazil, people know that the N-word is forbidden, but they still have the audacity to ask why, and also if they can say it when singing songs, for example. And if some K-pop singers and celebrities are truly just that unlearned and uneducated, maybe there should be mandatory sensitivity training seminars, especially since all of these agencies want their bands to blow up internationally. Adiola Ash actually reacted to a seminar a South Korean talent agency made about appropriation of Black culture, and it was actually not too bad. Another thing to keep in mind is that these entertainment groups work with Black creatives all the time. They're the song producers, lyricists, and sound mixers for all of these big-name groups and individuals, but it's evident that the higher-ups and even the performers don't really care about their lives and experiences, especially since it took 3 weeks for SM Entertainment to even come up with a statement about BLM. And this was only after the hashtag SM Blackout was organized by Twitter user and Black K-pop fan Devana Gilpin. She stated to the Korean Times, "They are the leading Korean entertainment company and pride themselves on their global reach. And they were one of the first to contract Black music producers and songwriters who gave them most of their biggest hit records. As consumers who spend our hard-earned money on SM acts, from buying multiple albums, streaming music and videos nonstop, and buying tickets to multiple tour stops, we wanted to say something and tried to be heard for once. These entertainment groups, as well as their employees, aka the artists and idols, cannot stay silent any longer, and they need to make a group and individual stand if K-pop really is going to be the global and all-inclusive collaborative movement we all want it to be."
K-pop is an industry that profits off of Black culture. And Black fans try their hardest to call out and or educate idols and companies that do cultural appropriation.
It hurts when someone that you kind of have a care for, that you respect, that you love as a fan, ends up doing something that hurts you and your identity. So it can be really painful, and it can be hard to navigate being a fan with those instances.
But with BTS specifically, I feel like their inspirations are no secret. Like their inspirations or influences are not a secret. From the Black artists that they collab with, the Black producers, the Black writers that they work with to like help create their music. There's no culture vulture thing going on here with BTS specifically, which can make it feel like more of like a cultural exchange because they're singing about, you know, things that are universal, but all of it is like steeped within like their own personal experiences. So it doesn't complicate my fandom specifically, but you know, it's there.
During the protests last summer, BTS and Big Hit Entertainment became one of the only South Korean entertainment companies to donate to the Black Lives Matter organization, donating $1 million, which was later matched by fans.
But I did not think that they would be donating so much money.
When ARMYs turned around and raised $1 million to match their donation, I was one of the people at the forefront of that too, because I was like, this makes me so proud, this makes me happy, this makes me want to give as well.
According to Variety, Some stars have shared their personal donations as well, like Los Angeles native Mark Twain of boy band GOT7 pledging $7,000 to the George Floyd Memorial Fund, Korean rapper PH1 donating $3,000 to Black Lives Matter, and a $1,000 donation to the Minnesota Freedom Fund from Jay of K-pop rock outfit Day 6. Elsewhere, Jay Park and his Seoul-based hip-hop label Higher Music shared that their artists have collectively donated $21,000 to Black Lives Matter. Park, who is signed with Roc Nation, donated $10,000 3 days after George Floyd's death, commenting that countless innocent unarmed people are losing their lives and nobody is taking responsibility or being held accountable. Obviously, donating money doesn't mean that one suddenly is absolved of anything or suddenly isn't racist, as we all hold racial biases whether we know it or not, and that's okay. Watch the video I made about that here. But it did make some fans feel seen and heard, and I think that's really significant. But evidence of physical and visible change comes with time, and it's going to take years to undo all of the harm on Black fans and on the Black community, and I don't personally know if that work is taking place. Back in 2014, BTS traveled to LA for a reality show entitled BTS American Hustle Life, in which the promo depicted, according to Bianca Mendez from Vice, the group getting kidnapped by a group of Black men, taken to an undisclosed Skid Row location, and yelled at like they were on an episode of Beyond Scared Straight. They later met mentors Dante Evans, Nate Waka, and Tony Jones, as well as teachers Coolio and Warren G, and vocal coach and music consultant Iris Stevenson, who was the inspiration for Sister Mary Clarence in Sister Act, to learn about the origins of hip-hop and to train their hip-hop skills, as when BTS debuted, they were going to be a hip-hop and rap-focused group. Honestly, the show was merely created to hype up the group and for spectacle, but there was still some cultural exchanges going on, and it was an attempt. Tony Jones, who was on the show, made a video looking back on his experience with the group, and I thought that was really interesting. He even said that they were really close friends at one point. Even earlier than that, in 2010, will.i.am called upon 2NE1, and they later did some collabs together. Him and CL even made a single as recently as 2018. I think a lot of people aren't aware that there are tons of Black musicians that are helping shape these groups' looks and images, which I think should be more widely known. The people behind the music clearly love what they do. It just sucks that they're not given the recognition that they deserve, and that blackface, for example, has been so tolerated, along with just this whole pale is pretty and gatekeeping around who can be the face of K-pop. There have been Black K-pop idols and Black trainees. In one episode of Asian Boss, Kaya Boyd, a Black former K-pop trainee, talked about her own experiences and why she left, and the backhanded compliments she got as a Black woman in Korea. She ended her talk with hopes of the future.
But I want to inspire a lot of people who have been asking me about the trainee life and wanting to do something in the entertainment business in Korea. Like, don't let the things that I'm saying like discourage you, because even though there's like some good things or some bad things there, it's not to say that it's not going to be worth it in the end, especially if this is something that you want. And I think that I would love to help more people and just let everyone know, like, this might seem like it's just impossible, but it's not.
I think there can be positive cultural exchanges, but that just won't happen until the Korean entertainment industry starts educating themselves on the history of racism and colorism in their own country and in the US, and how that birthed so many of the things that they love about Black culture and music today. Fatou Samba, who I mentioned earlier, is a Senegalese singer from the group Black Swan, and of course Alex Reid was the first Black K-pop idol from the group Rania, which was actually formerly Black Swan. Alex Reid spoke out during 2020 about how her former company, DR Music Entertainment, didn't issue a response to police brutality and about some of the racism she faced in the industry. For example, needing to wake up at 3 a.m. every morning to style her hair and do her makeup because no one was willing to put in the work to help her. Her former agency later did come out with something, but it wasn't really an acknowledgement of anything. According to the Washington Post, Philip Y.J. Yoon, the executive of DR Music Entertainment, said, "I can see online that there are some people who call our company a racist company. If we were a whole bunch of racists, we would never hold auditions for foreign trainees. Also, I don't think foreign trainees would dare try joining our company," said Yoon, who was introducing Reid's former group BP Rania as Black Pearl with Senegalese singer Fatou Samba. "We've had difficulties, but we know our company is one of the few companies that can do this because we are very open to cultural differences and put most effort to fix any problems. Alex does have a tell-all book coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. This year, SHINee came out with their comeback hit, Don't Call Me, which I personally really like, and it was produced with help from Chick and Dem Joints, and the image the company went for was heavily inspired by streetwear, and even had this clip play at the beginning of the song.
I promise to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
If you don't call me, check this out, y'all.
Which was something, but it did make more sense when knowing who helped create the song. But black people being huge behind-the-scenes players of K-pop doesn't necessarily mean that the appropriation element is okay, specifically when black street fashion and braids are used to seem edgy and dangerous for a music video, but then they shed that look when in more serious settings. It reminds me a lot of Ariana Grande's Elle shoot versus what she tends to look like while performing. And also this Leslie Jones sketch.
This is my real voice. This is how I really talk. See, I went to a good college, but when I showed up for my interview, they thought I was straight out of Compton, so I just went with, that voice and hid my real one for all these years.
Oh my God, well, this is how I really talk, so I guess I don't have to keep pretending like I talk like you.
Bitch, I knew you was fake! Get your broke ass out of here, old fake ass frontin' for 5 years, you're gone! Old Jabba the Hutt looking white bitch!
And while we're here, I know a lot of people think that having K-pop celebrities learn about racism is too much to ask or holding them to a higher standard, and it's like, no. The artists and idols themselves, along with the higher-ups at the entertainment agencies, know who they're modeling their music after, know who their inspirations are, so it makes it even more insensitive that they don't see problems with speaking in AAV to be funny or wearing braids to look cool. I think we hold K-pop stars and non-K-pop stars to equal standards. If you haven't seen the rightful angry backlash against Gwen Stefani, Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Katy Perry, Iggy Azalea, Adele, Lana Del Rey, etc., then you need to educate yourself. Some people act as if there has been zero backlash against white American entertainers doing the same freaking thing when there has been. Justin Bieber even addressed this last summer saying, "I am inspired by black culture, I have benefited off black culture, my style, how I sing, dance, perform, and my fashion have all been influenced and inspired by black culture." The biggest difference between the American music industry and the South Korean music industry is that South Korea, until recently, hasn't had a very large multicultural population to account for. If they want to, and they have for years, they just don't need to address race or racism against black people or colorism against darker-skinned people in general. To quote a Vice article, Korea hasn't really had a multicultural, multi-ethnic history up until very recently. For a long time, it's been known as the Hermit Kingdom, says Janie Cho, the New York Times editor who hails from Seoul. It's still quite a closed-off society, even though there is now a sizable expat community and many migrant workers from other parts of Asia. I think that's why people may seem angrier at K-pop stars because they can just ignore it and have ignored it for years. But they really can't anymore, especially since K-pop continues to be a big part of South Korea's economy, soft power, and overall global influence. Also, if you think that learning about racism is a big ask, then you shouldn't even be part of this conversation. Calling people and systems out and holding them accountable isn't setting impossible standards. Is it really too hard to ask someone not to be outwardly racist and educate themselves in the year of 2021? But if the only reason you are holding someone to a ridiculous standard is because you can't wait to tear them down, then you also shouldn't be part of this conversation. Black people can't shed their blackness. They're black 24/7, and that's what a lot of celebrities who use blackness, Asian or white, don't get when the appropriation talk comes up. As Stitch wrote in their blog post, Cultural Appropriation in the Age of K-Pop Part 1, Bangchan, Stray Kids, and Chenle, NCT Dream, recently wearing cornrows in promo content or videos are harmful because they and other Korean people, from entertainers to politicians to people on the street, associate cornrows with a street style to thug culture. These associations tie back to the simultaneous fear of and fascination with a supposedly inherent danger of blackness. They're harmful because they reinforce established views of black existence that then influence how Korean people on the peninsula and in the US, as well as non-black Korean hip-hop and pop fans worldwide, view black people and blackness. I think that K-pop and Korean society, as well as other people of other nationalities who are brought onto the K-pop scene, like Sid from Z-Pop who posted this photo with this caption, have had to reckon with the industries and their own anti-blackness now more than ever. And that's a good thing, even though it took so freaking long and so much violence for them to actually start doing anything about it. Like I said before, only time will tell if the industry is really going to start doing better, and it's going to take a while to see that. But I'm honestly hoping for the best for all of the Black entertainers and behind-the-scenes creatives who are working so hard to give us some amazing music. Before we go on, I think it's important to mention that as an Asian American K-pop fan, I can more easily escape into it than Black fans can. We should work to make a more inclusive space for Black fans and hold the industry accountable to the people who brought them their success. As Ciel said in her statement about Black Lives Matter, artists, directors, writers, dancers, designers, producers, stylists in the K-pop industry are all inspired by Black culture whether they acknowledge it or not. I would like to encourage all the K-pop fans to give back and show their love and support for all that we have received from Black artists. I want to explain to all the K-pop fans, fellow Asians, and non-Americans who feel like they have little or no connection to what's happening that we're all connected at the end of the day. And don't we, Asians living abroad, also face enough racism to the point where we are numb and sick of it? We must stand up together as one, helping them fight for justice. So I refer to K-pop stars as idols in this video, even though I myself don't like to think of them that way, but that's what they're called by fans and just within the K-pop community in general. They're called idols because Korean celebrities have to live up to these very high expectations of existence. They're supposed to be seen as these otherworldly beings that make no mistakes and have no faults and are just there for you to project yourself onto.
오케이, 그럼 이제 2012년도부터 이제 같이 그룹 활동을 해 오셨는데
네.
데뷔 이후 각 멤버가 변한 점이 있다면?
저는 사실 좀 여유로워진 것 같아요. 왜냐면 뭔가 이제 어느 순간부터 그냥 인간으로서 그냥 같은 사람으로서의 백현이의 모습을 좀 팬분들에게 공개를 하고, 그러니까 그 모습으로 계속 편안하게 살다 보니까 그냥 이제는 뭐 방송을 하거나 무대에 올라와서 팬분들에게 얘기를 할 때나 그럴 때도 너무 그냥 이게 나야 라고 보여줄 수 있는 거니까 너무 편안해지고.
K-pop agencies want to form these sorts of mythos around each of their groups and each of the members. For example, this member's the funny one, this one's the athletic one, this one's the oldest, and this one's the youngest, etc. This gives the members very little freedom to be themselves or show who they really are. They always need to be happy and smiling and upbeat and play into their role, not just as an idol, but as a member of a larger whole. Until recently, South Korean celebrities couldn't even be in public relationships as agencies were worried that it would alienate fans who hold on to this dream that they could one day date them. And as we all know, fandoms are very rational and accepting when they see their bias date another person. The members must also be forever grateful to their fans, no matter how weird and, let's be honest, creepy they can be. This culture that the entertainment industry groups created around their employees spawned a very dangerous culture surrounding K-pop celebrities, who have been the target of stalking as well as kidnapping attempts. In 2011, Taeyeon from SNSD was pulled off stage by a fan who got through security, but was then rescued by her team. More recently, in 2020, Baekhyun arrived at his apartment with his manager, only to find two stalkers waiting for him outside. The formation of this idea that they're otherworldly, amazing, perfect human beings makes people want to possess them, and also angrily lash out at them if they ever do anything wrong, like date or ask for privacy. I've said this about celebrity culture before, but we shouldn't idolize people or put people on pedestals. Celebrities are just people and they deserve rights and privacy and a choice in how they present to the world. But unfortunately, that's usually never the case, especially in the K-pop world, as they are essentially just employees of their company and are not only representing themselves, but the agency that they work for. There was a scandal a while back in 2016 when actress Jung Ka-eun posted a photo of herself breastfeeding her child and was relentlessly harassed and accused of seeking attention. And this unfortunately leads us to some very dark things. So because of this very intense idol culture and these high expectations, Korean celebrities tend to deal with a lot of mental health issues. It's a lot of pressure to be looked at under a microscope, while also not being able to be your true self, and thus being a celebrity in general, but specifically in K-pop, can become a very isolating experience. There have been many lives lost to suicide due to the fact that mental illness is still highly stigmatized and seen as a personal failing rather than something psychological. Two of the ones I'm going to be talking about now are Sully's death and Jonghyun's death. Jonghyun was a member of the group SHINee, which was formed under SM Entertainment and debuted in 2008. He died by suicide on December 18, 2017 at the age of 27, after a long and frankly kind of open battle with depression and the competitiveness and demanding nature of being an entertainer. Sully, who was a member of the group FFX, which debuted in 2009, also under SM Entertainment, died by suicide on October 14, 2019 at age 25, after also fighting against mental illness and also online harassment after posting photos of herself that were deemed inappropriate due to the fact that she wasn't covering herself up enough. They were two people who just wanted to be themselves and express who they were, but felt as though they couldn't because of the harassment they'd faced due to having every one of their actions analyzed and because they couldn't get proper treatment that they needed.
After, she was going through some image changes and, taking on new different types of jobs, it's definitely not the image that she started out with. And I think that change was very, very surprising to people. And I always just thought it was just like, man, these people just let her live, let her be an artist, let her be an actress, that's what art is, it's expression. You can't expect the same thing from the same person constantly.
Though their deaths and many others ultimately raised awareness that things need to change in the industry and that idols should be allowed freedom to be people and have flaws, they shouldn't have had to die in the first place. They should have been treated fairly and helped psychologically and physically. They'll never be forgotten and will forever live in our hearts. And I hope that we all try to treat one another a little bit better and not harass people online or make assumptions about others because you never know what someone is going through.
It was when I would see articles about the next, what did Sully do now or something, I was just like, why is this a big deal? This is just a girl just living her life.
Another dark side of K-pop is that it's rife with sexual abuse. Jang Ja-yeon, who portrayed a minor character in the K-drama Boys Over Flowers, died by suicide in 2009 and left a note indicating that she had been sexually and physically abused by many entertainment executives, including the CEO of her agency, Kim Sung-hoon. Kim was found guilty, and it was later uncovered that he would have her over and other women under his control come over to entertain businessmen at his various parties. In 2016, Dong Junyoung and Choi Jong-hoon were arrested after it was discovered that they were serial rapists, participated in gang rape, and filmed women without their consent doing sexual acts. This was all uncovered in a Kakao or WhatsApp type chat room where they and other participants would share videos and photos of women they've assaulted. They also coordinated assaults in the chat and promised others that they could get women for them. Choi Jong-hoon was also guilty of bribing police to look the other way after he committed a DUI. In the end, they were arrested, but both of their sentences were reduced last year. Jung's sentence went from 6 years to 5 years and Choi's from 5 to 2.5. They said some truly vile things in the chat that I won't repeat here, but if you want to, go and read this Washington Post article which goes into more detail. The K-pop industry is sadly, but I guess unsurprisingly, a boys' club that uses women's bodies just because they can. And the poor women suffering from the fallout of all of this don't feel safe now because of how victims of sexual assault are usually perceived, mainly as being sluts or not knowing better. In her CBS interview, Amber Liu said it best. She said something to the effect of, "Female K-pop stars need to appeal to a larger audience, while men don't."
I cannot deny that there is a big difference between the male and female levels in K-pop industry. There's definitely like a floating joke kind of going around that for girls you have to go for the general public popularity. For boys you need a fandom, like a big passionate fandom, and you have to steal the hearts of all your fans. I can't speak for everybody.
Women need to be these moral centers of the universe. Be sexy but not slutty. Be innocent but not prudish. And all of these other things. They need to be liked by women and men universally. But men just need a big fandom, and just need to appeal to a core demographic. It's not a surprise to me that Lee Soo-man's supergroup Super M is made up of already popular male idols rather than female idols. After the Kakao Talk scandal and more recent scandals with politicians and film directors, there were protests in South Korea of people standing up against the abuse of women's bodies at the hands of powerful men and the overall dismissal of rape and assault in South Korean society and in the world in general. One more incident I should mention is that in 2017, a woman sued Onyu from SHINee for touching her leg at a club multiple times inappropriately and of course without her consent. He issued an apology and the victim did drop the charges as Onyu was drunk at the time, but that honestly doesn't excuse his behavior. And though the incident thankfully didn't escalate, drunkenness is not an excuse to harass someone, period. Drinking is used a lot of the time to dismiss rude and inappropriate behavior in general. But I think specifically in South Korea, where drinking is a huge part of the culture and excuse to let loose from the strict confines of society, and that needs to stop. But I do hope that Onyu never does this again and want to give him time to grow and reflect on his own actions in the future, despite his and SM's apology being awkward at best. Sexual harassment has always been an open secret in any entertainment industry, from the US to South Korea, and it just cannot stand any longer. I don't know when it'll change or what will change it, but I know that staying silent about it isn't helping anyone. So I hope we continue to speak out and get angry until this is no longer tolerated anywhere. When I have to talk about K-pop to people who don't like K-pop, I feel like I'm that kid from the Cats news broadcast where he has to describe why he likes cats.
It's very exciting, different things are happening, it's very emotional,
And I do have to admit that a lot of my interest in K-pop, at least the music, is that I just like seeing attractive people sing and dance. The sex appeal of male K-pop groups cannot go unaddressed, and it is a very lamp-shaded marketing tool that the artists and the agencies employ, knowing full well what they're doing.
나 혹시 몰라 경고하는데 잘 들어 지금 위험해 So dangerous It's the love shot 대충 정해진 너라는 진리에 좋아할 마음 없으니
사실 조금 의도할 때도 있죠. 좀 약간 적셨을 때는
이거 나
올리고 왜냐면 뭔가 궁금하잖아요. 저 눈 어떤 표정을 하고 있을까? 고개를 딱 들고 뭔가 이런 표정에서 눈을 딱 가렸을 때 이 다음은 뭘까? 저한테 술 와인을 들고 이렇게 따르고 약간 그 잔을 들고 있는 듯한 느낌으로 춤을 추라고 하셨었어요 옛날에. 약간 그게 좀 표현이 된 건가 싶기도.
정말 치명 수치 과다였죠.
이거는 이제 구영이 형이랑 백구영 형이라고 이제 28 막 이런 청년 됐으니까 이제는 노골적으로 가도 된다.
그래서 선생님이 이 노래 틀어준다 할 때 엑소 팬 아니어도 러브샷 뮤비 틀고 다들 유희열 같은 미소 지으면서
And sometimes I do feel bad for the male performers because they really have to do a lot that is honestly kind of uncomfortable even for a fan to watch because you don't know how much of it might have been grooming or how much of it they even feel comfortable with. It's a lot to think about, but in the end I just really like the music and the artistry. Side note, I'm leaving a link to my K-pop playlist in the description if you want to know the kind of K-pop music I like and my favorite bands and singers, which shouldn't be a secret if you follow me on Twitter. I know that a lot of K-pop is derivative from a lot of other work, but it's also rightfully its own thing. There is a lot of talent, hard work, blood, sweat, and tears that the individual performers and singers themselves put into their craft, and it's no joke. Despite its major flaws like anti-blackness, the toxic and racist fan culture, and just being a pretty terrible and abusive industry to kids and women as well as men, I still find it enjoyable and can appreciate it for what it is. I don't try to glorify it above reproach, nor do I see it as the end of the world. It's just something I find fun, and like most people, I am too invested in the lives of celebrities because it's a nice form of escapism. We can like a thing without that also meaning that we endorse the flaws with that thing. And on the flip side, just because you really like something doesn't mean you can't also critique it. I really like how K-pop explores the possibility that music has in a more globalized world and hope that one day we can appreciate one another's cultures without also holding biases towards the people from those cultures. I think K-pop also illustrates how amazing it is that music can transcend language, and it just makes me really emotional when I see how many people's lives K-pop has touched. I think a lot of people might see K-pop in a very cynical way, and that's valid because in a way it is very cynical and manufactured. But to call all K-pop artists hacks, or to think that there is no hard work or artistry in the performances or behind the scenes would be totally incorrect. There's nothing out there that's not problematic, and I think as long as we make ourselves aware of those things and don't try to defend them, and instead work against them and acknowledge them, there's no harm in enjoying something that's not perfect because no piece of media or music or form of entertainment or being is perfect. But of course, no pressure if you can't get into K-pop or if you've left K-pop. There's a lot of really valid reasons to dislike it. So that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I worked really hard on it. I wrote so many different drafts, trashed them, and this finally came out. I started working on this video in probably January or February-ish, and I've been researching it for the past three and a half months, and I'm really proud of it. I hope you guys all like it and support this video if you do. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, feel free to disagree with me. You know, these are just my opinions. I'm not here to tell you how to feel about something. These are just my own thoughts and opinions, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm not here to attack you or your interests or your disinterests. So yeah, I'm going to be taking a 3-week break now because I'm honestly kind of burnt out a little after this video and the research process and everything. But I will come back with a Raya and the Last Dragon review, so that should be fun, and that will be mid-June. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. If you want to become a patron, please do so. And yeah, I'll see you all in June. Have a good rest of the month. Bye.